Okay, so we're reviewing for your Chapter 13 quiz on Monday. Everything in this review you need to know for your quiz. And again, we're working on whiteboards, but you can also reference this on YouTube over the weekend to study. All right, so let's get started. In the first section, you have 3 questions where you are asked to graph the linear equation. All right, so here's your first linear equation that you would have. Y equals negative 3x plus 2. Y equals negative 3x plus 2. Well, the graph will be supplied to you, okay, on the quiz. It's not something that you have to sketch. I'm just kind of doing a quick sketch of one. And you can do so on your whiteboards as well, just real quick. Now, I say to use the method of your choice because there are several methods that you could use to graph this linear equation. But all of the methods will lead to the same line on the graph. So I'm not going to make you, unless you want to, I'm not going to make you do the XY table where you plug in your negative 2, 0, and 2. Okay, you could do that to come up with your ordered pairs, but you don't have to. What's another method that you could use that might be even simpler than that? You could actually just look at the equation and know how to graph this equation. Okay, don't answer that yet, but whatever method you choose, whether it's using slope and Y-intercept, which we'll talk about in a minute, whether it's using a table, all right, you just have to be able to graph this linear equation. All right, so whatever method you choose is fine as long as you graph it correctly. Okay, so in this scenario, because is my equation already in slope-intercept form? Is it all? So it's good to go. It's ready to go. I actually can just look at the Y-intercept and know where the first point is going to go. Where does my first point go on the graph? On a Y value of 2. Okay, and now the equation actually tells me where I need to go from this point. Can anybody tell me? Where do I go from that point to graph it? You follow the slope. You go down 3. Wait a second, I need a run though. Run 1. Remember, any whole number can be over 1. So I follow my slope down 3, 1, 2, 3, over 1. I plot my point, and I draw my line through it. If you did the table, you should have gotten, for your first one, you should have gotten 8. Second ordered pair, you should have gotten 2. And for your third ordered pair, you should have gotten negative 4. Okay? And you can kind of notice, if you had gone over 2, down 4, your point still would have been on this line. I know that's kind of a rough draft of it, but what I'm trying to tell you is no matter if you use slope and Y-intercept like we did, or if you use the table, it's going to be the same line. So my advice to you for Monday, if the equation is already in slope-intercept form, just follow your Y-intercept and your slope. Just use that information to graph it. Does that make sense? Okay, so you have 3 questions like this. Okay, but what if I were to give you some different equations like this? 4y equals 16x plus 8. What if I were to give you an equation like this and I said graph it? Well, is it ready to graph? No. So at this point, okay, you really have 2 options. You can get it in slope-intercept form, or you can write it a second time and you can find your X and Y-intercept. Okay, so first one you'd find X-intercept, the second one you'd find Y. My advice to you on these problems is just to get the equation in slope-intercept form. It's really only one step. It's really only one step. And what would that one step be? Don't say it yet. Write it on your boards. Get this equation in slope-intercept form. It's not ready to graph until it's in slope-intercept form. And again, we're just going to sketch a graph real quick over off to the side. Nothing official, just something to kind of show the values. Logan, what did you do in the equation to get it in slope-intercept?
I divided 4y by 4 and divided 16x plus 8 by 4.
Very good. He divided the entire equation by 4. And did you get y equals 4x plus 2?
Yeah.
Did you guys get that? Okay, so now we're kind of back to where we were in the last equation. This equation is ready to graph. I don't need any other information to know where these points are going to go on my graph. Go ahead and sketch that graph. All right, let's see. Abby, do you know where your first point's going to go on your graph? Yes, on a y value of 2, because my last number in my equation shows me the y-intercept. And Jordan, where would I go from there?
Going up 4,
And
then to the right 1.
Very good. Because it's a whole number, I know it's over 1, so I go up 4, over 1. Okay, and then I can draw my line. So I've graphed that equation. All right, what if, now this is going to be the most complicated, I mean if there is one, but you have an equation that looks like this as well, where it's, let's say 4x plus 6y equals 24. And I'm going to tell you again to graph this equation. Now, you absolutely can just get this into slope-intercept form as well. This equation, just as a side note, this equation is written in standard form. You do need to know that formula. We'll go over the formulas in a minute. But standard form says you have ax plus by equals c. What does that mean? It basically means your x and your y terms are on the left side of the equation, just like we see here. And when that happens, all right, I know all of the sections kind of blend together at this point, but when that happens, one of the more practical methods to use is your X and Y-intercept, okay? Now, it doesn't mean you absolutely can just put this in slope-intercept form and be done with it. Or, and we can kind of use this as a chance to review, you can write it 2 times, okay? The first one, you're going to solve for your X. So if you remember, when you're solving for X, what can you plug in for Y? So 4x equals 24. Does everybody agree? Because 0, when I plug that in next to the 6, it's going to cancel. So now divide both sides by 4, and x equals 6. I did that pretty quick. All right, so that ordered pair is 6, 0. My x value was 6, and I used a y value of 0 to get there. All right, so what about my y-intercept? What would I do? Plug in 0 for x now. And guys, I really can just go ahead and divide up here, can't I? Totally fine if you do this on your quiz. You're solving for y, so 0 goes in for x. 4 times 0 is 0. Now what do I do to both sides? Divide by 6, and just like that, I've got my y-intercept. Okay, and an ordered pair that goes with y. And then it's just a matter of, I need to graph this. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 goes my x point, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 goes my y point, and then I could plot my line. All right, so I actually didn't even need the negatives on that. All right, so could I have subtracted 4x to the other side, then divide everything by 6? Absolutely. Okay, that would have been fine. All right, or you can graph it this way. How are we doing so far? Here's what I'm hoping, okay? On the quiz review, I'm hoping that it kind of all comes together for you, and that even though there were 7 sections in Chapter 13, it really comes down to graphing linear equations. That was like 2 or 3 sections right there. And then writing linear equations. Those are really your 2 main concepts from Chapter 13. Okay, so let's kind of back it up a little bit, and let's just take 2 ordered pairs 2, -8, and -6, 10. And I want you to find the slope. Go ahead, just 2 ordered pairs, and just find the slope. Go ahead and do that. All right, so we have 10 minus -8 over -6 minus 2. Did you guys get that? All right, double negative changes to a positive. 18 over -8. This can be reduced, not as a mixed number, but I can reduce it to -9 over 4. You say, well, the negative was in the denominator. Why did you put it in the numerator? Can anybody answer that? The run can't be negative. The rise is what is negative. Okay, so if I were to graph this, this would be a pretty steep slope, actually. Between the 2 points, I have to go all the way down 9 and then over 4. Okay, so you have 2 questions on your quiz where you have to find the slope. Any questions? All right, we're 5 questions in so far. Okay, do you guys remember proportional relationships? Do you guys remember proportional relationships? Sort of. Okay, so what if you had, all right, so I'm just going to do a quick sketch for you. We'll go 0, 10, 20, 30. No, I drew a straight line. Aren't you proud of me? Okay, and then we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let me get my lines. These are not going to be perfect. Sorry. I'll try.
Oh, got better. The second one got better. The third one.
Okay.
The third one was better, at least.
Oh, goodness, that was bad. That's not even lined up with the 1. Okay.
Are you trying to make a graph?
Yes.
Hey, it's hard to do on the iPad.
No, you don't have to draw that.
Okay, so here it is. All right, now here's my point. Let me put this in a different color. Okay, is this a proportional relationship? No, because what does it take to make a proportional relationship? Has to pass through the origin, okay? So what if I wrote, okay, that's not going to be perfect, but it's close enough that I can actually figure it out. Is this a proportional relationship? Is it? Yes, it is, because it passes through, pay attention, it passes through the origin. So if it does on your quiz, you have to write an equation for this line. How in the world are you going to go about doing that? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that, guys? You're going to pick 2 points on the line. Any 2 points. Now, this one's not perfect, so I'm going to kind of start where I know I actually drew it straight. Does everybody agree this is a point? 0, 0. Okay, does everybody agree this is a point? 1, 10. Remember, it's the x value first. So write those as ordered pairs. 0, 0, and 1, 10. And now you can find your slope, okay? You can find it using the ordered pairs, or you can count rise over run. How many did it rise between the 2 points? 10. And how many did it run? 1. Okay, now if I come over here to my ordered pairs, 10 minus 0 over 1 minus 0. That's going to be 10 over 1 as well. So either way, if you mark 2 points on the line, find your slope, that is your equation. Y equals 10x. There is no y-intercept. It intercepts the y-axis at a 0. So you could say plus 0, okay, but you don't have to. It's just y equals 10x. Proportional relationships have a y-intercept of 0. Why? Because when x is 0, y is 0. And that's very important. Okay? So that's what you need to understand. There is a question on your quiz that ask you to interpret the y-intercept. Are you guys with me? You need to listen to this part. So what if your x-axis represented days? Let's give it a label. And your y-axis represented miles. Miles run. Okay, so you're running this many miles in a day. You're obviously a very ambitious runner. Okay? So what would be the interpretation now that I've given them categories? What would be my interpretation? Noah? I run 10 miles in one day. What's the interpretation of the y-intercept? What's my y-intercept? 0. So what's my interpretation? I run 0 miles in 0 days. I run no miles, okay? I know that kind of seems obvious, but that's what it's asking for. Okay, we're through about half of your quiz. A lot of it's just formulas though, so don't worry.
Oh, this is simple.
Okay, now let's do, this is a little bit of a longer review. Sorry, that was number 5. Just because I want to make sure you guys have a really good resource to use to study. All right, you have 2 questions on your quiz. Negative 5x plus 15 equals 30. Oh, sorry, 15y equals 30. And I tell you, all right, so I need you to find the x and y-intercepts of the equation. So write it down. Negative 5x plus 15y equals 30. Go ahead and write your x and y-intercepts. Okay, if you're solving for x, what do you plug in for y? 0. So that cancels out 15y. You can just cross it out right there in the equation. So now what would you divide both sides by? Negative 5. So x equals what? Negative 6. Now rewrite your equation. Negative 5x plus 15y equals 30. Okay, now if you're solving for y, what would you plug in for x? 0. So that cancels out completely negative 5x. Now divide both sides by 15. I love it when this works out, right? Y equals 2. All right, so your x-intercept is negative 6, and your y-intercept is 2. Guys, these do not come together to make one ordered pair. They are 2 separate ordered pairs, negative 6 and 0, and 0, 2, if you were to be graphing them. All right, so you have 2 questions like that on your quiz. All right, we just have 2 concepts left. Oops. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording for part 1. It's just getting a little lengthy, and then we'll do a part 2 in just a sec.